The clock above the counter struck 2:17 when the radio static rose like breathing. The waitress had been alone for hours, or so she thought. Outside, fog devoured the highway, swallowing the neon sign letter by letter, until only O glowed like an eye. She felt watched, not from the door, but from within the glass itself, where reflections shifted slower than her own movements. Somewhere near the corner booth, a chair creaked. The air was too still for that. She whispered to no one, if no one's here, who just sat down. A faint ring of coffee rippled in its cup. Then the jukebox started, a song from a record that hadn't been there. As thunder rolled, the lights blinked, freezing her shadow beside another one that shouldn't exist. By morning, police tape fluttered weakly in the dawn breeze. The waitress was gone, the door locked from within. Her uniform hung on the coat hook beside an empty apron. The coffee remained warm, the jukebox still whispering its tune under a haze of dust. Surveillance footage froze at the exact moment her lips formed a question, then went black for 6 seconds. When the image returned, the diner was spotless. Chairs stacked, lights off, no trace of her breath on the glass. The fog outside began to move backward, crawling away from the building like a living thing. Somewhere deep in that gray horizon, a bell chimed once, soft and cold, as if someone had come back for her. 2 days later, a trucker swore he saw headlights vanish mid-turn on the same road. He found only tire marks that ended abruptly beside a half-burned map. Locals told him the road was cursed, not haunted, but hungry. The air there vibrated, bending sound and sight alike like heat on asphalt. He parked and listened. For a moment, he could swear he heard the clink of diner dishes and a voice humming softly. When he turned toward the woods, the headlights behind him came on, though no one was there. When they found the cell phone jammed into a tree, it was still recording. Wind, static, footsteps, then a whisper. It's not fog. It's listening. Investigators replayed the file until the voice began to fade, like a tape being erased by the thing it described. Coordinates on the screen blinked, zeros, infinite loops, pointing to nowhere. When one officer lifted it, the reflection in the cracked glass wasn't his own. It was her. The missing waitress, lips moving soundlessly, eyes fixed directly into the lens. Those who travel Route 19 after midnight all report the same thing. Time folds, watches stall, music distorts, headlights stretch too far. Some swear they glimpsed the diner again, perfectly intact, neon bright and inviting. One man claimed he parked and went inside, finding hot coffee and a smiling waitress who welcomed him by name. When dawn came, he was alone in an open field, his truck idling, the same cup in his hand still warm. The fog burned away, leaving tire marks that led nowhere and a faint reflection in the windshield, her shadow waving goodbye. The fog on Route 19 had begun to change. Drivers said it shimmered like heat now, bending headlights into halos that made the road appear endless. A local photographer set up her tripod to capture what she called the air's reflection. She clicked the shutter once. The image showed a figure standing beside her that hadn't been there. In the second frame, she was smiling faintly, eyes unfocused, as if listening to something behind the camera. The third frame was pure white. When authorities found her equipment, the lens was cracked in a perfect circle, and the camera kept repeating the sound of a distant diner bell each time they turned it on. It was as though the road itself had remembered being watched. A team of surveyors was sent to mark the highway for a resurfacing. Their instruments malfunctioned within minutes, GPS readings looping the same coordinates. They laughed at first, but one by one, their voices softened. One man thought he saw a diner sign blinking deep in the fog. Another swore he heard dishes clinking from underground. Then, without warning, all their radios synchronized and played a single message. Stay on the line. Hours later, only 2 of their trucks remained, parked neatly beside each other, engines cold. The others were gone, along with the fog, but the gravel beneath the tires was still wet, and faint footprints circled both vehicles, perfectly round, as if someone had walked backward in a loop. Late one night, a hitchhiker appeared outside a rest-stop diner, the new one, built miles from the ruins of the old. The waitress who served him said he was polite, quiet, and didn't look tired despite walking so far. He asked if this place used to be called the Hollow Grill. When she said no, his smile faltered. Then he whispered, "They moved it." Before she could ask who, he was gone. Security footage caught him leaving through the front door, but the glass reflected two figures walking away, one holding his hand. The reflection faded before the door closed. The state troopers who patrolled Route 19 began keeping their windows up even in summer. They said the road whispered now, faint radio chatter that matched no frequency. One officer followed it to a clearing where the asphalt simply stopped. Ahead lay only dirt, but his headlights illuminated a road sign suspended in midair, reading "Next Exit, the Hollow Grill." He backed away slowly, heart pounding, as the letters began to flicker. Then, without moving, the sign rotated toward him as if noticing. His dash cam caught 3 seconds before static consumed the feed. The fog forming a doorway, something moving behind it. He quit that night. By autumn, no one used Route 19 anymore. The road was officially closed for environmental repair. But locals knew better. They said you could still hear the diner bell at night, drifting through the pines, sometimes joined by laughter and the clink of glass. One hunter claimed he saw the waitress standing in the middle of the highway, holding a steaming cup as if waiting. When he blinked, she vanished, leaving only wet footprints leading into the fog. He followed them, but they stopped after 12 steps, ending in open air above a culvert. As he turned back, the fog began to pour upward like water in reverse, and somewhere within it, a soft voice whispered, "Orders ready." The ruins of the original diner were finally uncovered when construction crews cleared the overgrowth. Beneath the vines, they found walls blackened by fire, but somehow still standing. Inside, tables were arranged neatly, as if someone had left moments ago. In the far corner, a coffee pot sat full, its liquid thick and dark as oil. One worker, unsettled, whispered that it smelled fresh. The others laughed until the pot began to tremble and release steam. The foreman called for everyone to leave, but the door wouldn't open. Their flashlights flickered, showing for an instant the waitress standing behind the counter, smiling softly, hand raised in greeting. When the lights returned, she was gone, but a fresh cup of coffee steamed on every table. Reporters came next, hungry for a story. Norsai, one of them, a young journalist with tired eyes, insisted on staying overnight to document the truth. She set her recorder down, sat in the middle of the ruin, and began narrating into the dark. The playback later revealed a second voice, whispering her lines in perfect unison, half a second behind. She tried to laugh it off until the recorder turned itself off, and the battery melted. Her final note read only, "They don't want to be remembered." When the crew arrived at dawn, the ruin looked untouched again, but her chair faced the wall, and a mug of coffee rested beside it, still warm. A local historian arrived, drawn by the strange accounts. He believed the diner sat on old ground once used as a traveler's rest in the 1930s, a place known for never charging its guests. He found that all references ended abruptly, one summer, replaced by newspaper blanks. As he studied the records, the ink on his pages began to blur, letters bleeding together, until only the word "open" remained. He dropped the papers and realized the sound of typewriters filled the air, dozens of them clacking in unison though he was alone. When he fled outside, he saw the fog forming words across the cracked highway. "Order up." Night watchmen hired to guard the site lasted barely a week. One described footsteps pacing between the tables, stopping whenever he turned his flashlight toward them. Another heard the register ring open, though the drawer was long rusted shut. On the seventh night, a patrol car responding to a panic call found only the guard's flashlight lying on the floor, beam aimed upward at the ceiling, where condensation had formed the shape of a smile. The tape from his body cam ended with a quiet, rhythmic sound, porcelain tapping gently against glass. When investigators sealed the diner ruins, they paved over the entrance and marked it as restricted property. Yet drivers claim that on clear nights, headlights catch a new building at the same spot, shining chrome, neon letters flawless. Those who stop say the air smells of coffee and rain. Inside, the jukebox plays a tune no one recognizes, and a woman in yellow greets them warmly before the world dims. The next morning, their cars are found empty, keys still in the ignition, engines idling. Locals have stopped calling it a curse. They say it's simply service that never closes. By winter, the diner's glow began to reappear on satellite maps, faint but traceable. A pulsing beacon flickering between coordinates. A group of paranormal researchers decided to enter at midnight, streaming their investigation live. Their voices echoed as they joked about ghosts and faulty GPS. But when one of them asked if anyone smelled coffee, the signal cut. The live stream continued with no sound, showing only the empty booths. Viewers swore the figures still moved in the reflections, laughing, sipping, clinking glasses. When the police arrived, the cameras were still running, recording static punctuated by one repeated phrase, whispered in rhythm with the jukebox. "We're still open." Inside, the researchers left microphones running. Playback later revealed quiet chatter, dishes clinking, a doorbell, laughter. Yet, the team's own voices overlapped, repeating each line twice, once in real time and once in delay, like echoes from another recording. Leah's last entry in her notebook read, "They're not haunting us, we're joining them." Hours later, the diner lights went dark again, and snow erased their tracks. When the thaw came, all that remained was a folded napkin pressed into the ice, ink bleeding into the words. "Order complete." A week later, rescue crews searched the site. They found new tire marks frozen in the snow leading to the vanished building. At the center of the field, a chrome stool stood upright, its surface warm to the touch despite the cold. When one rescuer placed his hand on it, he heard faint music, a soft hum of an old jukebox tune, and smelled roasted coffee. His partner saw condensation form on his breath, even though the temperature had dropped below zero. Then both noticed their footprints slowly fading behind them, snow covering from beneath upward. They fled, but the hum followed them all the way to the highway. An old man who once owned a cafe nearby came forward, saying he'd built the hollow grill decades ago. He swore that on its opening night, a woman asked to work the counter for just one shift. She served everyone perfectly, then vanished before dawn. Her name, he said, was never on any record. When asked why he shut the place down, he answered quietly, "She kept serving." As reporters recorded his story, the lights in his living room flickered, and the sound of clinking cups came through the walls. He smiled faintly and murmured, "Guess she remembered me." That spring, the highway reopened. The first travelers to cross found a brand new rest stop, stainless steel, spotless, humming quietly with distant music. The sign read, "The Hollow Grill." Since 1954, they entered, delighted to see coffee already waiting on each table. When they returned to their cars, only minutes had passed, yet every clock showed sunrise, 12 hours gone. In their mirrors, the diner shimmered like heat haze before fading into air. Somewhere inside, the bell chimed again, and the same gentle voice whispered, "See you tomorrow." After the diner's sudden return, the state installed new warning signs, but drivers claimed the air itself now carried whispers. At dawn, the fog gathered not on the ground but in the sky, forming soft, coiling shapes that seemed to watch. Truckers began to speak of hearing their own voices echo from the mist, repeating phrases they hadn't said aloud. One morning, a bus full of commuters vanished after radioing a distress call that sounded like laughter. Investigators traced the sound to a wide bend in the highway, where every compass spun in circles on the asphalt. Dozens of coffee rings shimmered like fresh spills, steaming faintly, though the air was cold. Scientists from a nearby university arrived with instruments to study the atmospheric distortion. Their recordings caught patterns of rhythm that matched a human heartbeat, pulsing across miles. One researcher stared into the fog until tears ran down his face. He swore he saw a whole diner floating in the distance, glowing beneath the clouds. When he blinked, it was gone, but his equipment registered a temperature spike identical to fresh coffee. The team packed up quickly, yet one sensor continued transmitting long after power down, a faint hum punctuated by 3 words, repeating endlessly. "Table for one." Meanwhile, at the town's small archive, an intern uncovered a ledger dated decades earlier, listing unpaid checks from the Hollow Grill. Every signature belonged to someone recently missing. She turned the pages carefully, and coffee stains began to seep through the paper, forming fresh as she watched. The office lights flickered. She heard chairs scraping across tile. "Gentle, patient sounds." Then came a quiet female voice. "You forgot the tip." The intern fled, but the ledger followed her, later found on her car seat. "Pages now blank, except for one printed line at the bottom." Receipt closed. Late one evening, fog rolled into town, thicker than ever. Street lamps dimmed to a dull gold as silence fell. From every radio and phone came a single tone, low, steady, familiar. People stepped onto porches, drawn toward the highway where light rippled like water. For a heartbeat, they saw the diner fully restored, doors wide, laughter and warmth spilling out. Then the sound snapped off, and the fog folded inward, leaving the street empty. Only one thing remained on the asphalt. Dozens of napkins arranged in neat rows, each bearing the same handwritten line, "Thank you for coming." Weeks later, the fog finally lifted. The road was silent, the diner gone again. Yet people spoke softly of hearing a bell whenever rain began. Travelers left offerings, coffee cups, spoons, napkins, on the shoulder of Route 19th, and none were ever found the next day. Some said they dreamed of sitting inside the glowing diner, everyone they'd lost smiling across the booth. Each dream ended the same way. The waitress setting down a fresh cup, leaning close and whispering, "Stay a while." Those who woke swore they could still smell the coffee, warm and sweet, long after morning light returned. Months passed before anyone dared to drive Route 19 again. Then one fogless afternoon, a woman appeared walking down the shoulder, barefoot, clothes soaked as if she had been caught in a storm. She said nothing, only carried a chipped coffee cup with the words, "The Hollow Grill," printed faintly across its rim. The police brought her in, but every question went unanswered. When they tried to fingerprint her, the ink pooled off her skin like water on glass. She finally whispered one thing: "The bill's paid." Minutes later, she vanished from the cell without unlocking the door. Her cup remained, still warm, steam rising in slow spirals that smelled faintly of rain. Soon after, more people began returning. Truckers, hikers, even the bus passengers long presumed dead. They all wandered in from different roads, calm and smiling, unable to recall where they had been. Each carried something from the diner: a napkin, a spoon, a receipt dated decades prior. Doctors found their heart rates unnaturally slow, as though they had been dreaming for months. One woman began humming the diner's old jukebox song in her sleep. Another stared at her reflection till it smiled back before she did. No one could explain it, but every returnee's shadow seemed slightly delayed, moving a fraction of a second after their body. Authorities quarantined the returnees, but curiosity drew visitors. Families begged for answers. Reporters camped outside fences, and scientists begged to study the phenomena. The returnee spoke gently, always polite, asking for small things: Coffee, cream, sugar, silence. When the power failed one night, guards heard dozens of voices murmuring in perfect unison, "Welcome back." In the dark, the building filled with the scent of brewed coffee and wet asphalt. When lights returned, the rooms were empty. All that remained were empty cups, each placed neatly on folded napkins, spelling one word: open. The government sealed Route 19 once again, fencing it with steel and warning signs, but locals still whispered of figures walking its shoulder at night. Drivers claimed to see travelers waving calmly, their faces pale but kind. A man who stopped said he recognized one of them, his wife, missing for 6 years. She approached his car window, placed a hand on the glass and mouthed, "Home's still open." When he blinked, she was gone, leaving behind a faint handprint shaped from frost that didn't melt until morning. Cameras later showed his car door opening on its own, headlights flickering as if bowing in farewell. Eventually, the disappearances slowed, and Route 19 fell silent again. But those who had once returned began to fade from memory, names erased from records, photographs empty where faces once were. Late at night, their families swore they still heard them humming through walls, that old jukebox tune looping softly. In a nearby museum, the chipped coffee cup from the first returnee sits in a locked case, refilling itself every full moon. Guards report the same dream afterward. They're sitting in the diner booth, the air warm, the fog outside bright like morning, and the waitress smiles, pouring their cup full again, whispering gently, "You made it back." Long after Route 19 was erased from maps, a new bypass opened where the diner once stood. The asphalt gleamed too smooth, the air unnaturally still. During the ribbon cutting, the mayor raised her scissors and froze as the faint chime of a bell drifted through the breeze. Cameras caught her eyes widening before static consumed every broadcast. When signal returned, the crowd was gone. Chairs toppled, microphones buzzing. Only the ribbon remained, neatly tied into the shape of a coffee cup. The wind carried a low hum, soft and warm, like the first note of a jukebox song remembered from a dream. That night, the construction lights along the bypass turned themselves on. Drivers reported seeing a small chrome building glowing in the dark valley below, steam drifting from its vents. Every hour, a door seemed to open and close on its own. When inspectors arrived at dawn, they found nothing. No building, no power lines, just a perfect circle of dry pavement smelling faintly of sugar and rain. The lead inspector, shaking, whispered that he'd grown up eating pie at a place that looked exactly like that. His partner stared blankly and replied, "There was never a diner here." Across town, electrical surges swept through phones and radios. For exactly 6 minutes, every device played the same sound, a spoon clinking softly against glass. Families paused mid-sentence, transfixed by a warmth spreading through the air, a memory that didn't belong to them. Some wept, claiming they could smell coffee brewing. Others whispered greetings to voices that answered in familiar tones. When the power returned, every clock read 2:17 a.m., and the words, "Order ready," flickered on every screen before fading. From the hills beyond, thunder rolled once and stopped. At the sealed diner ruins, the ground began to breathe. Cracks widened as soft light pulsed beneath, rhythmic as a heartbeat. A maintenance worker on patrol followed the glow and found a single door standing upright in the open air. No frame, no walls, just a door. He reached for the handle. The moment it turned, warm air brushed his face, carrying the scent of cinnamon and rain. Voices drifted through. Laughter, greetings, the faint ring of a bell. He smiled involuntarily, whispered, home," and stepped through. The door shut quietly and vanished, leaving behind only the echo of footsteps fading inward. By the next dawn, Route 19 was gone from every database, replaced by blank coordinates. Yet travelers still swear that on sleepless nights, headlights bend toward an unseen turnout. Those who follow it find a warm light waiting, chrome glinting, bell chiming and the familiar aroma of brewed coffee. Inside, the waitress greets them by name, pours their cup full, and says softly, "You've come a long way." Then, the world grows still. Some never return, others wake in their cars at sunrise, hands around an empty mug, steam fading in the chill. The hollow grill remains where it always was, between memory and mourning, forever open.